Ladies and gentlemen, it's a pleasure and privilege for me to be an integral part of this interesting and exciting evening. We all know it's a defining moment in the world. Yesterday, the G20 has resolved very many issues in terms of sustaining the global growth, ensuring the financial crisis which was destabilizing the global growth is coming to terms. Today morning, I was in Bloomberg, 9:30 Dubai Standard Time. The anchor was asking a few questions. It was conceptually in relation to the design of the content, the format of this evening. We all know we are in a defining moment, as I said. The world is changing on account of globalization. The world is also changing on account of re-regulation. What was once called as deregulation has become re-regulations. Regulators have become a telling story today. They are redefining it in terms of a business modeling. We also understand consumerism plays a bigger role. And technology drives the rest of the world. Yesterday, Alibaba was listed as one of the most valuable company in the United States. The scope is getting redefined in terms of business modeling. The trade or banking, in investments or finance is getting reorganized in substance. All the stakeholders are redefining their performance in substance. The interpretation of today's interview was interesting because it's confined to investments. The question was, so much is happening in the Gulf states. You have Iraq, you have Syria, you have, again, geopolitical makeup is visibly shaking the Middle East. What's happening in terms of international investments? I said, you should see the reflection in the market space. The reflection today is Dubai is up 51% year to date. Qatar is up 37%. Saudi is up 29%. Abu Dhabi is up 20%. Oman is up 9%. Kuwait is almost flat. That is the issue. We understand the changing dynamics of the world. This region has got enormous amount of financial stability. That was my comment to the interpreter. The substance is financial economies are converting as real. Real economies are redefining their scope and performance. Communism is alterating its form and substance. Capitalism is getting redefined. Consumerism, consumer protection plays a vital role. The regulators have failed in the past. The light switch regulation has failed. Auditors have failed. Rating agencies have failed. Financial economies are truly trying to convert as real. This global issue has to be resolved with politics and economics converging in substance to have a global solution. That's what Keynes meeting yesterday, G20 finance ministers. At the same time, global partnership is in the making. Politics is converging to set in a globalization era to add value to gross welfare, to the mass. That's the change. This change is positive, productive, constructive. It is becoming more ethical and moral in terms of business practice. There's absolutely nothing wrong with the change which is happening in the world. While we recognize political makeup is getting reorganized, geopolitical tensions are visibly setting human dignity as the prime force to reckon. And that force is changing the world today. That's precisely the reasons why global political makeup is getting extraordinary vibration. These changes are not cosmetics. These interpretations are not cosmetics. These are real. These changes are going to set in future generations well off. Eradication of extreme poverty, gender equality, ensuring prime healthcare comes in, universal education comes in, environment sustainability comes in. These are interpretation of the Millennium Development Goals. These goals cannot be accomplished unless G20, inclusive growth, comes in. Whether it's developing economies or developed economies, they all have to come to terms with substance to see we add value to the humanity, human dignity. That's a process. That's a convergence process. That's precisely the reason why these changes are very important for us to interpret. That's what precisely we do as an institution. We do knowledge management. That is precisely the reason why we sit in today. The changes which are happening in the region should be interpreted in prospects. These are simple opportunities. These are value creations which we need to recognize to make sure whichever be the business you are engaged in, whichever be the industry you are engaged in, you convert to your advantage. Time and again, we share the knowledge. In terms of global economics, IMF has set in spring meetings, which is getting redefined. The global growth is said to be 3.4%, which might reach 4% possibly next year. Advanced economies still reeling under pressure. We have seen America is setting a new momentum. Bond buying program, quantitative easing is coming to an end next month. What will happen to the overall economic sustainability? Unemployment, jobless claims are reducing. Economic momentum is improving. Inflation is coming. But what will happen to sustainable development expenditure? What will happen to the growth is an issue. Normalization of interest. And again, inflating the economy, improving the liquidity has changed the world. Asset price inflation has been the dictum. What has changed is nothing but liquidity. Liquidity has moved into funding, funding into solvency, solvency into sovereign issue. But still, the world at large has to come to terms by a universal standard in terms of accounting, valuation, securitizations, to make sure we are all coming to terms. Europe has got a different set of interpretation. Euro area, enlarged Europe, still, the banking union has been set in as a discipline, but fiscal union has not come. While monetary policy is centralized, fiscal policy is not centralized. That's creating enormous amount of issues in terms of Maastricht Treaty. The convergence criteria which we set in is impacting individual states, countries and individuals. Continents who have lived beyond their means have to pay a price. That's precisely happening in Europe. Euro area, if you look at it, it's going to be less than 1%. UK is coming out of it. Last week was a classic story of human dignity. Prosperity and human rights are the telling story. Scotland referendum was much interpreted. It was a close call. Today, world at large have to realize this world is a new world. New world has got so much to understand and interpret for human dignity. Europe still have to resolve in terms of fiscal union. Unless you come into understanding the dynamics of fiscal interpretations, unless you rationalize the mechanism with austerity, at the same time value creation has to come together in substance, Europe is not going to recover in total. Emerging economies are decelerating. When QE tapering was attempted to be interpreted in substance, we had seen the decelerations in terms of emerging markets. China, India, Russia, Brussels. With Russian geopolitical aspirations, the world is again getting a new world order. With sanctions redefining the Russian space, world at large is trying to interpret territorial integrity in substance. These are not ordinary momentum. These have got extraordinary interpretation. China is slowing down. India, with a new government, is projecting that they can deliver sustainable values. We have seen the interpretations. We have seen India is coming to terms in terms of mass validation for the new government. The interpretations and the initiatives which are responsive to see sustainable policy makeups are coming up. We have seen it in terms of liberalization, in terms of the investments, and we also seen inflation is under control. But fiscal consolidation has to come in. You have to make sure sustainability comes in terms of global makeup. Incremental consumption comes out of over 60% comes out of the emerging markets, but they are interconnected, interdependent in real terms to the global economics. That's what we have seen. Financial economies are still converting as real, as I said. But financial markets, if you look at it, they are being interpreted as a gambling ground. That's what the reflection today we are going to talk about in terms of currency war. Currency war has created a trade war. That's what we are seeing. When you print money, improving the liquidity, you're weakening the currency. When you weaken the currency, the export-driven economies have got a value advantage. It's not only America which has done the inflation, which is interpreted by pumping money, improving the liquidity, you can inflate the economies. It is European Central Bank has done. We have seen Abenomics is getting redefining the Japan, and we have seen the growth momentum, 1.6 to 2% growth, which was a different task altogether in terms of overall technical recession, which Japan was going through a couple of years before. World at large still has to interpret as interdependent in terms of monetary accommodations. But what's happening in this region, we have to reflect with committed opportunity. The 6 states put together, they are in a position to produce not less than 1.7 trillion. The current account surplus is over 20%. If you interpret for next 3 years, we have very similar reflection. The government expenditure drives the change. Fiscal frames every single budget. If you look at the singles, focus is on healthcare and education, urban development, non-hydrocarbon. At the same time, these are a reflection to the financial makeup. Financial stability has been the core foundation. Today's question on Bloomberg was a simple foreign direct outflow. The reason why the Gulf states are embarking on investing in sovereign funds is to recognize diversification as a structured solution comes in. Multiple markets, multiple sectors, they are engaged in ensuring substantive returns comes in so that they can absorb in the event of deflection in the market price. Currency market apart, commodity market, if you see, when the currency gets weakened, commodity hedge comes in. That's what today oil is quoting 92 or 98 when it comes to Brent or WTI is simple reflection of not only demand and supply, but currency gets strengthened, dollar gets strengthened. Whereas you have seen in the last 1 month, dollar index is today 84.65. Extraordinary. Extraordinary changes happening in terms of the currency market. That has got reflection into the overall economic momentum. Property market again is asset price inflated. Well, we have seen Dubai was in difficult conditions in 2009. I had the privilege of meeting the financial media, and I said Dubai's problem is measurable, manageable, controllable. We know Dubai is not a nation. UAE is a nation as defined by the United Nations, and we know this is measurable. We have seen the reflection in the property market management. The country's visionary leadership has changed the dynamics, altercated its substance, and today it's much more stable and functional. Dubai is bouncing back, and UAE Central Bank has set in the right kind of momentum to make sure we have extraordinary regulatory alignment comes in. Even IMF is interpreting it in the right direction. But world at large has to be interpreted in your own terms, in your own functional engagement. The reflection, we are seeing it in the banking side. Corporate banking is getting redefined. The business model is converging. Investment bankers have no more casino banking business models. They are coming to terms with consumerism in mind. Ethical and moral interpretations are much more by regulatory alignment. We have seen global financial institutions are paying a heavy price by not complying with the regulatory alignment. But the change is good. Change is to be measured and managed to make sure you interpret in the right directions to make the most advantage out of it. Today's sessions, that is precisely the purpose for which we have coined. With me, the Elite panel, you have seen the professional profile of every single individual. The way we have coined this technical session is to recognize, we understand the trade is important, especially from a local perspective. That's precisely this. Mr. Mohammed Kamali is joining from Dubai perspective as a part of the overall engagement. And it's not only trade. Trade has to be backed up with proper currency management, as I said. Trade war creates a currency war. And that's what we have seen. Global economics is altercating its form and substance. That's precisely the reason hedging the currency is equally important. At the same time, diversification comes in every part of the economic makeup. You have to understand how the local economy is getting diversified. What are the opportunities? What sort of policy makeup which are going to drive the diversification as a structured solution? That's why Kimberly is here. NBD is here to interpret the currency makeup and how do we hedge the solutions. But it is also important for us. It's not only customer is important. Supply chains comes in prospects. You have to be operationally efficient to optimize the functional makeup of any institutions to have economic advantage. Enterprise resource planning comes out of pure interpretation of convergence of supply chain management as well as customer relationship management. So supply chain management is also to be discussed in prospects to understand the trade and industry. As precisely the reason we have called Mr. Hariharan from IMAL. Last but not the least, everything is integral part of your overall business design. When you have customer interface, there are conflicts which are emanating as well. When there is an economic momentum which drives the change, interpretation is very important from a legal perspective. That's precisely the reason the senior most professional from legal state law firm from Singapore, plus SNG Partners representations here by two of the leading practitioners, both Mr. Rajesh as well as Mr. Suresh Nair is here to elucidate further. That's precisely the reasons why we have coined the sessions. I'm sure, like me, you're going to enjoy the interesting and interpretations of the professionals who are going to present here, and let's enrich ourselves by knowledge management by attending this session. Thank you once again for participation. Thank you.